My name is Rima. Betrayed by the one person I trusted most. I'm left with a heart full of anger and pain. Josh, my therapist, wasn't just someone who was supposed to help me heal. He became my world. But everything came crashing down when I found him with my younger sister, Maya, laughing and holding hands. The shock was unbearable, but what I discovered next was even worse. Josh wasn't just betraying me. He'd ruined many girls' lives with his manipulative games. I wasn't the first, and I wouldn't be the last. But the final straw? Learning that he was also in a secret relationship with Maya. He had preyed on both of us. Now the man who shattered my trust and betrayed my sister has to pay. I won't stop until I make him feel the pain he's caused. It's time for harsh revenge, and I won't rest until I've destroyed him completely. My name is Rima, and for as long as I can remember, I've been trying to piece together a life that makes sense. I grew up in a small town where trust was as sacred as love. And for years, I thought I had found the perfect person to help me heal, the one person who could understand me. Josh, my therapist, was a gentle soul who seemed to know exactly what I needed. His calm demeanor, his thoughtful words, they made me feel safe in a world that often felt too chaotic. He wasn't just a therapist. He became a guide, a friend, and someone I thought I could lean on forever. Then there was Maya, my younger sister, my confidant, and the one person I'd always believed would never hurt me. We grew up close, sharing everything from childhood secrets to our deepest fears. I trusted Maya with my life. She was my rock, the one person who could make me laugh no matter how dark things seemed. We were inseparable, or at least, I thought we were. Everything began to unravel one night when I walked into Josh's office earlier than usual, and I caught him laughing with Maya. They were sitting too close, their eyes locked in a way that made my stomach churn. It was a moment that should have been innocent, but something about it felt off. My instincts screamed that something was wrong, but I brushed it off. That is, until I discovered the truth. Josh, the man I trusted with my mind, had not only been using his power over me, he had been doing it to others too. The painful realization hit me like a ton of bricks. I wasn't the only one. There were others before me, and probably more after. But what made the betrayal sting the most was learning that Josh wasn't just manipulating me. He was also involved with Maya. The sister I thought I knew had been swept into his web of lies and deceit. Everything I had believed in shattered in an instant. The man I had trusted, the sister I loved, had both turned on me. But instead of letting the pain control me, it sparked something far more dangerous: anger. I couldn't just walk away from this. I couldn't let Josh and Maya get away with what they'd done. My mind raced, and the desire for revenge took root deep within me. This wasn't just about a betrayal of trust. It was about exposing the truth and taking back control of my life. Before everything crumbled, I had a life filled with people I trusted, people who helped me make sense of the world. I had my family, of course, Maya, my sister, and my mother, who was the epitome of strength. I had always looked up to her, admired how she managed everything with grace. And Maya, my younger sister, was my best friend. We shared everything: our childhood, our secrets, our dreams. We were more than sisters. We were each other's anchors. She was the one who'd listen when no one else would, the one who would laugh with me after a rough day, and the person I could always count on. I believed she understood me better than anyone else in this world. Then there was Josh, my therapist, whom I began seeing after a series of personal struggles. At first, it was strictly professional, but over time, I allowed myself to trust him, to believe that he genuinely cared about my well-being. His warm smile and thoughtful words gave me the strength to confront my deepest fears. I found solace in our sessions, in his reassurance that everything would be okay. I confided in him about my family, my worries, my desires. Slowly, I began to open up, something I hadn't done in years. Josh became more than a therapist. He became a symbol of hope, a safe space where I could be vulnerable without fear of judgment. We would talk for hours, and sometimes I'd leave his office feeling lighter, as if he truly understood the dark corners of my mind. In those moments, I felt as though I wasn't alone in the world, as though someone, at least one person, truly cared. With Maya, too, things felt uncomplicated. Our bond was easy, like breathing, and she always knew how to make me feel better, even on the darkest days. Whether we were planning our next family holiday or just spending time together in the quiet comfort of our home, it felt like nothing could come between us. But then, slowly, the seeds of doubt began to sprout. It wasn't a loud moment, but there were subtle shifts. A glance that lingered too long, an odd silence that stretched between Maya and Josh. At first, I brushed it off as nothing more than my overactive imagination, until everything changed with that fateful night, the night I walked in and saw the truth. The people I loved, the people I thought I could trust, had turned their backs on me. And the betrayal was not just from one, but from both of them. The devastation hit me in waves, like a storm I wasn't prepared for. How could Maya, the sister who knew my deepest pain, be involved with Josh, the man I trusted with my heart? How could they both deceive me so completely? The pain was almost unbearable, but it ignited something in me, a burning need for justice. The relationships I once cherished were now broken beyond repair, and I was left to pick up the pieces, with only one thing driving me: revenge. It was a night like any other when everything shattered. I had scheduled my therapy session with Josh earlier in the day, but something felt different that evening. My mind raced as I walked to his office, a knot of unease tightening in my chest. I hadn't been feeling right for a while. There were subtle changes in Josh's behavior, small moments where he seemed distracted or distant. But I brushed them off, telling myself it was all in my head. I trusted him. But that night, the truth came crashing down. I opened the door to Josh's office, expecting the usual quiet greeting. Instead, I was met with something I could never have imagined. There, sitting together on the couch, were Josh and Maya. They weren't just talking, they were laughing, holding hands, their faces illuminated by the soft light of the room. For a moment, I froze, unable to comprehend what I was seeing. Josh's smile was the same warm, reassuring smile he'd always given me. But Maya, my sister, the one person I trusted above all others, was leaning in close to him, her fingers intertwined with his. I felt the air leave my lungs as my world came crashing down. I couldn't breathe. Maya? My voice trembled, the word barely escaping my lips. My mind was racing, trying to make sense of it all. But the words wouldn't come. The shock was too overwhelming. How could this be happening? Why hadn't I seen it coming? Josh and Maya both looked up in unison, their faces frozen in an expression I would never forget. Josh's eyes quickly darted away, a look of guilt flashing across his face. Maya, on the other hand, looked guilty in a different way, almost as though she had been caught doing something she knew was wrong, yet couldn't bring herself to stop. "Lima," Josh said softly, rising from the couch, but his voice lacked the warmth I once trusted. We need to talk." The words cut through me like a blade. I didn't need to hear more. The betrayal was already so clear. I wasn't just the victim of one lie, but two: my therapist, the man I had bared my soul to, and my own sister, the one person I thought would never hurt me. In that moment, everything I had ever believed about love, trust, and family crumbled. I was left standing there, heartbroken and shattered, questioning everything I knew. Josh and Maya were no longer just people I loved. They had become my greatest betrayal. And for the first time in my life, I felt completely, utterly alone. The world went quiet the moment I saw them together. In that instant, I felt the ground beneath me vanish. My heart thudded painfully in my chest, each beat a reminder of how completely I had been betrayed. I wanted to scream, to lash out, but instead, I stood there numb, the weight of the truth suffocating me. My thoughts scrambled, trying to make sense of what I had just witnessed. How long had this been going on? Had I been nothing more than a pawn in their game? My mind screamed at me to run, to escape the crushing reality that everything I had trusted was a lie. But I couldn't move. The betrayal felt like a physical force, wrapping itself around my chest, making it impossible to breathe. I had loved Josh, truly deeply, and I had loved Maya, my sister, who I had shared everything with. How could they both betray me in such a cold, calculated way? The question kept echoing in my mind, each repetition driving the knife of hurt deeper into my heart. I spent the following days in a haze, trying to avoid facing what had happened. I shut myself off from everyone, even from my mother, who noticed the change in me but couldn't get through the wall I had built around myself. I wanted to cry, to rage, to scream at the world for being so unfair, but I couldn't. Instead, I spent hours alone, pacing, trying to find some clarity in the chaos of my emotions. Anger, hurt, confusion. They all churned within me, fighting for dominance, but none of them felt as powerful as the overwhelming desire for revenge. In the quiet of my apartment, I replayed the moment of betrayal over and over. Each time it felt like I was seeing it for the first time. What stung the most wasn't just the affair. It was the trust I had placed in both of them, the vulnerability I had shown. I had trusted Josh with my deepest fears, my most fragile moments. I had shared pieces of my soul with him. And Maya, my sister, she knew all of my pain. She had been there when I needed comfort, when I was falling apart. I never imagined she would be capable of such cruelty. Yet, despite the overwhelming sadness, a dark seed had taken root inside me. Anger, fierce and relentless, fueled the fire inside. I couldn't just let them get away with this. Part of me wanted to forgive, to move on, but forgiveness felt impossible. I had been played by the people I loved most. They had stolen my peace, my trust, my sense of self. And they had to pay for it. I didn't want to be consumed by this anger, but I couldn't deny that it was all I had left. Late one night, when the weight of my emotions felt unbearable, I reached out to my best friend Alicia. She had been my rock for years, someone I could count on through anything. When she answered, her voice soft and filled with concern, I told her everything, the betrayal, the lies, the heartbreak. She was silent for a moment, processing the gravity of what I had shared. Then she spoke with a calmness that somehow brought me back to myself. "Rima," she said gently, "I know you're hurting, but seeking revenge will only make you more lost. You've always been stronger than this. Don't let them destroy you." Her words, though filled with wisdom, fell on deaf ears. I wasn't ready to forgive, not yet. The pain was still too fresh, too raw. And deep down, a part of me wanted to see them pay for what they had done, to watch as the lives they had built on lies crumbled just like mine had. I didn't know where this path would lead me, but I knew one thing. I wasn't going to let Josh and Maya get away with it. Not now. Not ever. The days following my emotional breakdown were a blur of sleepless nights and restless thoughts. But as time passed, something within me shifted. The raw pain that had once crippled me began to morph into something darker, more focused. The anger that consumed me was no longer just a feeling. It became a force, a driving power that I could use to regain control of my life. I could no longer afford to be the victim. I had to take back what was mine, and Josh and Maya were going to pay. It was in the quiet moments, when the house was empty and the weight of the betrayal still hung in the air, that the plan began to form. Revenge, I realized, wasn't about recklessly lashing out. It was about precision, about striking where it hurt the most, and leaving no room for escape. I had to be smart, calculated. I had to become the architect of their downfall. First, Josh. The man I had trusted, the one I had bared my soul to. He had taken everything I had given him, and worse, he had abused his position of power over me. He had ruined my sense of self-worth, played on my vulnerabilities, and discarded me without a second thought. But now his carefully crafted image of the perfect therapist would be his undoing. I knew he had been involved in shady practices, taking advantage of his patient's trust for his own personal gain. It was time to expose him. The question was, how? I needed evidence, something irrefutable that would make sure he lost everything: his license, his reputation, and most importantly, his ability to manipulate anyone else. I began digging. I remembered little things. Offhand comments he had made during our sessions, his unexplained absences, and the lingering, unsettling feeling that had always been in the back of my mind. I reached out to former clients of his, people who had left him abruptly, people who had vanished from his practice. I gathered their stories, piecing them together like a puzzle. It wasn't easy. Josh had carefully cultivated a web of secrecy around his practice. But I was patient. I knew that nothing worth having came easy. Then there was Maya, my sister. The person who had always been my closest ally, the one I trusted more than anyone. She had crossed a line, betraying me in the most intimate way possible. I didn't just want her to regret what she had done. I wanted her to feel the full weight of her actions. She had always been the one who could get away with anything, the one people gravitated toward without question. But now I saw her for what she truly was: selfish, manipulative, and willing to hurt anyone for her own gain. My revenge on her would be more personal. I knew her weaknesses, what made her tick, what terrified her. I began planting seeds of doubt in her life, turning her friends and colleagues against her without her even realizing it. I leaked rumors, small things that would make people question her character, her intentions. Her world would begin to unravel in subtle ways, each layer peeling back until nothing was left but the truth. She was just as capable of betrayal as anyone else. But the obstacles were many. Josh was protected by his profession, his status, and his charm. Maya, too, had a way of manipulating people, making herself seem like the victim when things went wrong. And as much as I wanted to see them both brought down, I knew this wasn't going to be easy. I had to stay one step ahead, anticipate their every move, and cover my tracks carefully. The fear of failure was always there, lurking in the background. What if they discovered what I was doing before it was too late? What if I lost everything in the process? But the answer was always the same. I couldn't let them get away with this. My revenge was my only way of reclaiming my dignity and proving that I was not someone to be underestimated. As I prepared, I felt a mix of adrenaline and fear. Adrenaline because the plan was coming together. Fear because I knew that if I slipped, even once, everything could fall apart. But there was no turning back. The first move had been made, and the game was on. The first step of my plan was always the most crucial, getting Josh to slip. I had gathered enough evidence to destroy him, but the final blow had to come from his own arrogance. I waited for the right moment, biding my time, watching him from the shadows. It didn't take long for him to make a mistake. He reached out to me, sensing my vulnerability, his arrogance blinding him to the trap I had set. I agreed to meet him one last time, pretending to be open to reconciliation, playing the part of the heartbroken fool. As we sat in his office, I could feel the tension hanging in the air. He spoke with his usual charm, trying to manipulate me, but I knew exactly what to say to unravel him. I brought up the former clients I had spoken to, the ones who had been pushed into vulnerable situations, the ones whose trust he had betrayed. The realization hit him slowly, but when it did, it was clear. He knew his secrets were no longer safe. I left the office, watching his world begin to tremble as he frantically tried to cover up his tracks. My evidence was in motion, and soon the authorities would take action. But I wasn't done. Maya was next. I had planted the rumors, slowly poisoning the relationships she held so dear. Friends who had once praised her began to question her motives. Colleagues who had supported her started to doubt her integrity. It was subtle at first, but it was enough to send her spiraling. She began to confide in me, unaware of the storm I had set in motion. I played the role of the supportive sister, all the while watching her unravel. It was painful, seeing the woman who had once been my closest ally now questioning everything around her. But even as I watched Maya's life crumble, I felt the weight of my actions. The faces of the people I had manipulated, the lives I had touched without truly caring. It all felt heavy. My revenge had been sweet at first, but now it felt hollow. I knew it wasn't enough to just hurt them. I needed to break them, to make them realize the pain they had caused me. As the final pieces of my plan fell into place, I felt the tension rise. Would Josh lose his license? Would Maya lose everything she had built? It was all happening, but I couldn't shake the nagging doubt. Was this truly what I wanted? Was this the only way to find peace, or had I become just as lost as they were? The execution was flawless, but the cost was greater than I had ever anticipated. The moment of confrontation came faster than I had expected, and it hit with a force I wasn't entirely prepared for. It began with a message from Josh. His tone, desperate, his usual calmness replaced by panic. He knew what I had done. He knew I had exposed his darkest secrets, and now his world was crashing down around him. His clinic was under investigation, his license was at risk, and the clients he had betrayed were speaking out. His empire was crumbling, and he was no longer in control. But it wasn't enough. Not for me. I agreed to meet him at the last place he expected, the same office where he had once manipulated me, where I had sat as his patient. Now, I stood on the other side of the desk, not as someone who sought healing, but as someone who sought closure. Josh's eyes widened as I walked in. He looked frail, nothing like the confident, self-assured therapist who had once claimed to understand me. But now, I understood him better than he could ever have imagined. "You think this is over?" he asked, his voice trembling. "You've ruined everything." I stood there, cold and unyielding, the evidence of his wrongdoings hanging in the air between us. "No," I replied. "This is just the beginning. You've ruined countless lives, Josh. Mine was just one of many. And now I'm going to make sure you pay for everything." The tension between us was unbearable. He tried to plead with me, appealing to the small part of me that had once loved him, the part of me that had once trusted him. I was wrong. Rima, I made mistakes, but you don't have to do this. You don't have to ruin me. I could feel the familiar tug of sympathy, the remnants of the person I had been. But I pushed it aside, hardening my heart. This wasn't about redemption for him. It was about making sure he could never hurt anyone again. Suddenly, Maya entered and I froze. She had always been able to manipulate me with her sweetness, her charm. But now, seeing her standing there, I realized how much I had underestimated her. She had known all along what Josh was doing, what he had done to me, and yet, she had chosen him over me. She was complicit, not just in the betrayal, but in my heartbreak. Rima, please, Maya pleaded, her eyes wide with fear. You don't have to do this. I know I messed up, but we're sisters. Please don't take this too far. Her words echoed in my mind, and for a moment, I hesitated. My emotions, tangled and raw, threatened to overwhelm me. What had I become? The sister I once knew, the one who was my best friend, was standing before me, begging for mercy. Could I really destroy her life too? Could I take everything from Josh and her and still find peace? The weight of the decision pressed down on me, and in that split second, everything I had planned, everything I had worked for, felt meaningless. My thirst for revenge had brought me to the edge, but now I had a choice. I could destroy them both, or I could let go. The silence was deafening. My heart raced as I stared at the two people who had shattered my world. Would I go further? Or would I let mercy guide me, choosing to break free from the cycle of revenge? Get out, I finally said, my voice shaking, not with anger, but with the realization that I no longer wanted to play their game. Both of you. The decision was made. They left, defeated, but so was I. The path to revenge had led me down a dark road, but in the end, I found that the true power wasn't in destroying them. It was in choosing to reclaim my peace. In the days that followed the confrontation, I could feel the weight of my decisions settling in. The aftermath of my actions didn't bring the relief I thought it would. I had exposed Josh, but the satisfaction I once believed would follow the unveiling of his betrayal never came. Instead, I felt a hollow emptiness, as if I had torn apart a part of myself in the process. I spent weeks reflecting on everything, the lies, the manipulations, and my quest for revenge. Initially, I thought I would find closure in punishing them. But what I realized, as I sat alone in the quiet aftermath, was that revenge had only brought me closer to the person I never wanted to become. The anger that had consumed me for so long slowly began to fade, replaced by a deep sense of emptiness I hadn't anticipated. I had let my pain define me. I had let my desire for justice become my only focus.